Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire make some pretty unique and sometimes frustrating choices when it comes to revamping the Gym Leaders teams for Generation 6 battle mechanics. So today, we'll be taking a look at these teams and give them a boost to make them shine just a bit more. Hey, I'm OCreations, and welcome back to the series where I try to fix Pokemon Gym Leaders and Elite Four members that are particularly lacking in difficulty. And hey, that doesn't mean we won't be covering Emerald in a future video. I'm looking at you, Brawly, and your team that can't touch Sableye, a Pokemon that can be found right before battling you. So with that, let's get started. So the player starts their journey in Littleroot Town as per usual, grabbing their Hoenn starter, defeating their rival in battle, and heading off on their way to Rustboro City. But something that the remakes have added here over the original is the Dex Nav, a fantastic feature that tells the player information about wild Pokemon before battling them. And sometimes, the Dex Nav will pick up hidden Pokemon that appear in the overworld as shaking grass, and these hidden Pokemon get a chance of having an egg move, hidden ability, higher level, boosted IVs, and even a boosted chance of being shiny. And because the player has access to both hidden abilities and egg moves off rip, why not let the Gym Leaders and Elite Four members have access to them too? So when the player reaches Rustboro City, they'll have to face the first Gym Leader, Roxanne, the rock type specialist. And her team usually consists of a Geodude and Nosepass, much like her Ruby and Sapphire teams. But something that immediately gives these guys a buff is the all new and improved Sturdy ability, allowing for them to always live one move. But interestingly enough, Game Freak decided to give Roxanne's Nosepass Magnet Pull instead. In terms of possible counters, you obviously have two starters that are super effective in Trico and Mudkip. And if the player chooses Torchic, there are still plenty of other counters found before Rustboro, and the classic duo of Lotad and Seedot, who can evolve by this point. Wingull and Surskit are here too, although I can't imagine they'll be living any hits. And there's even an in-game trade for Makuhita in Rustboro City in exchange for the 5% slack off in Petalburg Woods. Oh, and not to mention True Mission there too, sporting both Leech Seed and Mega Drain by the level cap. So I think the player will likely have at least one Pokemon to help them out here. So with that, let's get fixing. First up, Roxanne surprisingly will keep her Geodude here at level 13 with Sturdy and the moves Rock Tomb, Rollout, Defense Curl, and Sandstorm. I know a lot of people attribute the fossils to Roxanne, but I think Geodude works perfectly here, as it's really meant to just guarantee Sandstorm being set up with Sturdy, and if the player doesn't take it out fast, it might go for the classic Defense Curl into Rollout, so watch out. And I know Geodude does get Magnitude at level 12 here, but I really think it's a bit too much, seeing as it has the potential of doing 150 base power if it rolls a Magnitude 10. So next up is Roxanne's classic ace, Nosepass, this time at level 15 with Sandforce and the moves Rock Tomb, Thunder Wave, Block, and Harden. With the Sandstorm setup, this is where the real fight begins, as Nosepass's hidden ability Sandforce boosts the damage of Rock, Ground, and Steel type moves by 30% when the sand is up. And with the Sandstorm also giving Rock types a 50% boost to their special defense beyond Gen 4, this thing will be a monster to deal with. And thankfully, there are plenty of cherry berries for the player to pick up before this fight to prevent getting para-haxed. I thought about giving Sandstorm to this guy too, to make sure the sand can go back up, but I think having Sandforce active for longer might be a bit too much. And speaking of which, if the player is able to pick up either Seedot or the in-game trade for Makuhita, these guys can learn Fake Out, meaning they can ensure that the lead Geodude can never even set up the sand in the first place. So there's definitely still some counters for this team. And we'll go ahead and throw an Oranberry down for a boost in HP, and that is Roxanne's new and improved team. I tried to make it more menacing without going too overboard here, and I think that's exactly what we were able to do. Anyways, that means it's time for the player to double back and have Briny give them a ride to Dewford Town, the home of the second gym leader and fighting type master, Brawly. And his ORAS team is pretty interesting, as his Makuhita keeps knockoff from Ruby and Sapphire. But the kicker here is that it was buffed between generations, from being a 20 base power move that apparently did not permanently remove held items back then, to now being a 65 base power move that does permanently remove held items. So if you bring in your one and only Quick Claw to this fight and it's knocked off, it's gone forever. And in terms of possible counters the player could have by this point, Wurmple's evolutions absolutely clear this fight, especially without a rock move around. And if the player is lucky enough to run into a vault on Route 102, it'll kinda just be okay here, as it's not going to be taking too many hits in return. But besides that, you got two birds available by this point in Talo and Wingle, who can provide some insane damage output here, one more than the other of course. And something I should note is that in the remakes, the player can't actually access the deeper area of Granite Cave until after beating Brawly, meaning Sableye is no longer a threat. But both Zubat and Abra can be found at the highest point of the cave, which is still accessible. And while Zubat can deal some damage here, Kadabra is just an instant win. So with that, let's punch on in, as Brawly will start with his Machop, now at level 15, with No Guard and the moves Low Sweep, Rock Tomb, Seismic Toss, and Bulk Up. Taking inspiration from Roxanne as her TM of choice, this Machop is meant to take charge of those pesky flying types, while also lowering their speed in the process. And with No Guard guaranteeing that Rock Tomb will hit, you'll have to be careful getting around it. Next up, Brawly will be seeing an addition similar to his Emerald team in Metatite at level 15, with pure power in the moves Rock Smash, Light Screen, Confusion, and Reflect. And this guy is meant to provide support with screens while also lowering the defense of the opponent with Rock Smash. Before the ace in the hole, Brawly's Makuhita is sent out at level 17, who'd be sporting Guts in the moves Fake Out, Feint Attack, Force Palm, and Bulk Up, with Feint Attack here being a move learnt via breeding with a Sableye, doubling as a fun reference to Sableye being untouchable against his team in Emerald, and as a great fix for Knockoff being such an overpowered and frustrating move to deal with this early on in the game. And of course, we'll throw Makuhita a Citrus Berry to patch up some of its health during the fight. And that's Brawly's new and improved team. With coverage for both flying and psychic types and some defensive tactics and screens, this team will be hard to pass. So that brings us to the newly renovated Mauville City that now functions more closely to a big mall than an actual city. But in most iterations of the region, this city's gym leader, Watson, is the biggest hurdle of the early game. And it's even crazier here, as his level cap is the lowest in this game than it has ever been, at level 21, meaning the player must figure out a way to take down the underleveled Magnemite with even less resources. And in terms of counters that the player has access to, there's not a ton of ground types to help out, with Marshtomp obviously being great help here, as well as Geodude, and I guess if you're really desperate you could delay your Nincada's evolution to at least have the immunity. Other than that though, Makuhita provides great value against the steel types, and any grass types like Shroomish or Gloom could help with resisting attacks. If the player doesn't choose Mudkip as their starter, or doesn't roll a Geodude in Granite Cave, I could see Watson as a bit of an issue. But overall, I think a bit of a buff is warranted. So first up, instead of Magnemite, Watson will send out a new addition in Plusle at level 21 with Plus in the moves Encore, Volt Switch, Charm, and Nuzzle. It always baffled me that despite how much Game Freak pushed these Pika clones back in Gen 3, Watson never used one in his home region. Heck, if you enter his apartment in Mauville City, you'll even see that he owns both a Plusle and Minun, so why not use one? I was considering making this fight a double battle, since they're designed more with doubles in mind, but I think making a change like that goes beyond the scope of what I aim to do here, so single battle it is. But this little buddy is mainly here to act as support, with tons of utility to debuff the player's mons. And after dealing with the Electric Rat, Watson will send out his next Pokemon in Manectric at level 21, with Static in the moves Spark, Electric Terrain, Ice Fang via breeding with an X-Cloud, and Howl. Just like in my Fixing the Kalos Gym Leaders video, I wanted to highlight the terrains in the gyms, as it's a mechanic that was introduced in this generation. And with Manectric having a higher special attack here, even though his learn set leans physical, I thought it'd be relatively balanced to bring on some excellent coverage in Ice Fang that, if left unchecked with Howl, could prove to be pretty scary. And that just leaves Watson's ace, Magneton, at level 23, with Sturdy and the moves Mirror Shot, Volt Switch, Thunder Wave, and Sonic Boom. With the base game fight only giving Sturdy to his lead Magnemite, I thought giving it to the ace here would make for a fair increase in difficulty, allowing for the Magneton to make some kind of motion before going down. And with a held Citrus Berry to heal it up a bit, it may be able to live a little bit longer. I've also opted to increase the level cap by 2 levels here in order to give the player more options to deal with this fight in terms of a hardcore Nuzlocke. Specifically, Shroomish now has the ability to evolve into Breloom and gain the move Mach Punch to provide excellent damage potential against this guy. And that is Watson's new and improved team. But oh creations, why didn't you just make Watson's Manectric his new ace? Oh, hey youngster Joey, I heard you just started 5th grade for the 20th year in a row. Yeah, I'm excited to learn about the type chart again. I keep forgetting what my Rattata can hit for super effective damage. Oh yeah, good luck with that one. So I feel like Manectric being Watson's ace was more of an Emerald thing, so I think keeping Magneton as his ace feels more in line with the original vision of this team in Ruby and Sapphire. I guess that makes sense. Anyways, I got homework to do. And with Watson defeated, the player is now given access to north of the city, where they'll experience a bit of the evil team plot before landing in Lavaridge Town, home of the 4th gym leader and fire-type master, Flannery. And geez, her hair is almost as red as the subscribe button. That's so weird. Anyways, and her team in the base game can seem a little underwhelming, especially compared to the Camerupt on her Emerald team. But there are a few surprises in here, and the simple Amnesia set on Nummel, and of course, the flagship White Smoke Overheat Torkoal in the back. But I think we can do a little better. When looking at what the player has access to, there are a lot of pretty great water types, as well as some rock and ground types found on various routes up to this point. So first up, Flannery will send out her all-new Ninetales at level 26 with their hidden ability Drought, and the moves Will-O-Wisp, Hex, Flame Burst, and Secret Power. I think introducing a Drought Pokemon will do wonders in adding just a bit more spice to this fight. And with 2 different ways to inflict status on the player's mons, with a scary powerful Hex to boot, this fiery fox can really catch you off guard. Next up is Flannery's Numel at level 26, keeping simple with the moves Lava Plume, Earth Power, Rock Tomb, and Amnesia. If this guy can get a simple Amnesia up behind the sun, that quad weakness to water might not be as strong as you once thought. And that just leaves Flannery's ace, and honestly, I have no notes, Game Freak. I'm keeping Torkoal exactly the same, as it provides a pretty intense challenge. And just in case that sun has dissipated, Torkoal can bring the sun back up to keep that fire ablaze. And that is Flannery's new and improved team. With a standout ace, all she really needed was some tweaking to the other members and an easier way to set up the sun. And just as the player defeats Flannery, they can backtrack to Petalburg to finally face their own father, Norman, the normal type gym leader. And his team in ORAS is super interesting, as his TM of choice has been changed from Facade to Retaliate. And while both are 70 base power, I have a feeling more people saw the secondary effect of Retaliate than Facade, doubling in power if on the last turn an ally had fainted. I'll also note that there is a particular lack of diversity on his team, which was somewhat addressed in Emerald, but there are a considerable amount of normal types in Hoenn that kind of miss out on the spotlight because of that. And looking at counters available to the player in the entire west part of the region, if the player chose Torchic, they'd have Combustion's Double Kick available to help out along with Hariyama, Breloom, and Machoke as the only fighting types, with a side of helpful defensive resists in the various rock types. So there's definitely a healthy portion portion of options available. Oh yeah, and there's also Save Live for a reliable immunity. And let's get into it. Instead of a first of 2 slacking, Norman will lead with the often overlooked Zangoose at level 28 with immunity and the moves Crush Claw, Metal Claw, learned via breeding with Excadrill, Pursuit, and Hoenn Claws to make that Crush and Metal Claw 100% accurate. With setup potential and pursuit trapping capability, the player needs to come to the fight prepared to take this guy down ASAP. That means Norman's new addition is out next, his Girafarig at level 28, with Inner Focus and the moves Psybeam, Retaliate, Assurance, and Reflect for that boost in defense. This guy is found in the Safari Zone on the east side of Hoenn and functions not only as a great reference to Norman's home region of Johto, but also as a fantastic counter to those fighting types the player might try to rely on for this fight. And hopefully with Reflect still up, Norman instead of Vigoroth will send out his newly acquired Swallow at level 28 with Guts and the moves Retaliate, Aerial Ace, Roost, and Focus Energy. I could have very easily thrown Facade back on this guy with Flame Orb, but I thought that would have been a bit too much on top of the Girafarig counter here too. But what we have here is yet another fighting type counter that may make bringing those rock type resists a little bit more appealing. And that just leaves Norman's classic ace in the hole, Slacking, at level 30 with Truant and the moves Retaliate, Feint Attack, Yawn, and Counter. If the player forgets to bring a Pokemon with Protect to this fight, they'll be sorry, as that boosted Retaliate will most likely be taking more than just names. And just for good measure, I brought that classic counter just in case the player misses out on any ranges. And of course, Slacking will be getting a Citrus Berry for that extra bit of recovery. And that is Norman's team updated. This guy is meant to be the big roadblock before the western half of the region is opened up to the player. And with Normal having a small amount of weaknesses, I think this fight is designed to truly test the player's skills with what they have access to at this point in the game. And with the western half of the region unlocked, the player can finally surf across Route 118, where Steven does his usual song and dance and move. Wait, what? No, Game Freak, please don't do this. Why? In Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Game Freak made a couple additions to the story to include Mega Evolutions. And this is not only the point where you are given a Mega Bracelet, but it's also the point where you just straight up get a Mega Latios or Latias for free. Surely Game Freak went ahead and redesigned the gym leaders beyond this point so that Megas weren't extremely broken, right? Wrong. None of them use a Mega Pokemon. So just like in my Fixing the Kalos Gym Leaders video, I'll be giving these leaders Mega Evolutions to balance this out. But anyways, upon arriving in Fortree City, the player will have to go up against the Flying type master, Winona. And her team here has always felt a little underwhelming compared to the funny Tropius she gets in Emerald, but at the cost of losing her Swallow to a meddling Swablu. But since we threw Norman a Swallow, I unfortunately think we'll have to kick it to the curb too. And in terms of counters, I think you all get it by now. The player's got a decent amount of both electric and rock types available to them, besides that free Mega Latios and Latias. And with that, let's get this fix a-going. Winona will now be leading with her Pelipper at level 33, with Keen Eye and the moves Water Pulse, Air Cutter, Roost, and Tailwind. That's right, Winona's got a Tailwind setter to boost her team's speed. And for some reason, Winona didn't run a special flying type move here, opting for her TM of choice, Aerial Ace, instead. Next out is Winona's tried and true Tropius at level 33 with Chlorophyll and the moves Air Slash, Magical Leaf, Growth, and Leech Seed, learnt via breeding with a Breloom. I did consider throwing its hidden ability Harvest on here with a Citrus Berry, but I thought that would be a bit too much on top of what's coming later in the fight. And that means Winona's Skarmory is up next at level 33 with Sturdy and the moves Steel Wing, Aerial Ace, Rock Tomb, and Roost. Again, Winona decided to throw here a little bit by keeping Air Cutter on this guy, so I've opted to go for Rock Tomb instead, providing some decent speed control if Tailwind peters out by now. And with new Sturdy here too, this thing will be taking another hit or two to deal with it. But once the player gets past this wall, Winona will send out her ace, Altaria, at level 35 with Natural Cure and the moves Earthquake, Secret Power, Aerial Ace, and Dragon Dance. Of course, we have to keep the iconic Earthquake TM pickup here, as it acts as great coverage, and Secret Power still keeps that para chance from Dragon Breath while taking advantage of the physical attacking Pokemon boosts from D-Dance. But that's not all, because Altaria will be holding an Altarianite, making it capable of Mega Evolution, giving it Pixelate in the process, meaning that Secret Power will now be dealing Stab Fairy type damage. And there you have it, the first gym battle in the game to get access to Mega Evolution, and add a level cap that is one level below the evolution level of the final starter, no less. And with Winona defeated, the player now has to tackle a bit more of the evil team plot before gaining access to the ocean in the east side of the region, where they'll eventually stumble across Mossdeep City, the home of the 7th gym leaders and psychic type masters Tate and Liza, the first double battle gym leaders in the series. And this is just one of the many classic examples of Game Freak opting for a faithful remake over improving on their previous choices. Why in the world do the twins still only have 2 Pokemon? And Emerald did something fantastic here by giving them Claydol and Xatu for the Earthquake strats, but I think there are some other options out there. And again, the players got access to a lot of potential counters for psychic types, so I think a major buff is warranted here. So starting out, Tate and Liza will actually lead with their classic duo of Lunatone and Solrock, both being level 42 with Levitate, and Lunatone sporting Light Screen, Moonblast, Hypnosis, and Calm Mind, and Solrock rocking the classic Sunny Day Solar Beam combo along with Rock Slide and Fire Spin, potentially trapping the player's mons on the field. Honestly, their movesets are largely fine as is, providing a ton of support and utility, as well as a spread move in Rock Slide. But who will come in to reap the benefits once the player spikes the rocks back to the ground? That's right, Tate and Liza will send out a Gallade and Gardevoir respectively, both at level 44, with Gallade sporting Steadfast and the moves Brick Break, Leaf Blade, Psycho Cut, and Protect, and Gardevoir equipped with Synchronize and the moves Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, Thunderbolt, and Calm Mind. And that is not all, because depending on the gender that the player character chose at the beginning of the game, Gallade or Gardevoir will be holding their Mega Stone. And I know, Wally's got a Mega Gallade in there already, so why not have his Ralts evolve into the opposite of the one that Tate and Liza choose to use? So if the player chose a boy, then Liza's Gardevoir will sport the Gardevoirite, and Wally will evolve his Ralts into a Gallade as per usual, sporting the Galladeite, and vice versa, throwing a Citrus Berry on the opposite for good measure. And that is the new and improved Tate and Liza fight. And I know the level cap here is set to 45 in the base game, but I feel like they put it a little bit higher to try to compensate for the fact that they only had 2 Pokemon. So here, we'll bring it down to 44. With 2 added team members and a Mega Evolution, the player will need to come prepared for a bit more of a challenge. And with that, let's dive back into Sootopolis City, the home of the 8th gym leader and water type master, Wallace. And his team in the base game does have a few bright spots, but I think there's a lot we can do to elevate this team to true 8th gym glory. So starting out, instead of Love Disc, Wallace will lead with his Seeking instead. At level 45, with Swift Swim and the moves Waterfall, Rain Dance, Poison Jab, and Mega Horn. While Love Disc has some pretty decent utility as a lead, I think Seeking works wonders here to set up the rain and get that Swift Swim boost. Sadly, there isn't a single Pokemon available to Wallace to use in order to set up the rain with Drizzle, as Pelipper doesn't get access to that ability until Gen 7, and the Poliwag line is not even found in either the expanded Dex Nav or the Mirage spots. And come on, I don't think we're putting Kyogre on this team, right? So we'll have to stick with Rain Dance here. Next up, Wallace will send out his Whiscash at level 45, sporting his hidden ability Hydration, meaning he can't be statused while the rain is up, so he can take full advantage of his moveset consisting of Earthquake, Zen Headbutt, Waterfall, and Rest. Just in case you get this guy on low, Whiscash can rest up to full to throw you off a bit, only for Hydration to wake it up from that nap at the end of the turn. And that just means Love Disc's replacement is out next, a Lantern at level 45 with Volt Absorb and the moves Discharge, Surf, Confuse Ray, and Signal Beam for some nice coverage. And I'm sorry, you won't be able to catch me building a water type team without a Volt Absorb Lantern on it if I can help it, because it just works so well as a pivot, assuming the AI will actually do so every once in a while. And that just brings us to another addition over Celio's slot, a Gyarados at level 45 with Intimidate and the moves Waterfall, Crunch, Earthquake, and Dragon rain dance. And of course, this guy will be holding the Gyarados, making it capable of Mega Evolution, changing its type to Water Dark and its ability to Mold Breaker. With there only being 4 Water type Mega Evolutions and 2 of them being starter Pokemon, I thought about giving Wallace a Swampert over his Whiscash, but I thought that it and Seaking were too iconic to his gym leader team to get rid of. And there is Mega Slowbro, but it can't be accessed until getting the National Pokedex here, which is right after this fight, so we'll talk about that more when we get to the Elite Four in this game. So that just leaves Mega Gyarados, who actually is found on Wallace's champion team usually, so it kinda works out, especially since he uses a team reminiscent of his champion team in the Delta episode. And once the player takes it down, there'll be nothing left besides Wallace's ace, Milotic, at level 47 with Marvel Scale, with the only changes in the moves being Surf over Hydro Pump. I know Hydro Pump can be scary, but I much prefer a perfectly accurate move at 90 base power. I know it may feel weird that Wallace's ace is still Milotic here over his newly acquired Mega, but the Pokemon is just too iconic for him to have without it being his top choice. And we might as well make it a little more distinct by throwing a Flame Orb on here, unlocking its Marvel Scale ability, doubling its defense with the drawback of damage over time, that hopefully Recover can heal up. And that is Wallace's new and improved squad. I've gone ahead and boosted the level cap here by 1 level because of all of the evil team plot that happens in between the last 2 gyms. With a ton of coverage and secondary typings to balance the team out, I think the player is going to find a decent bit of challenge in this fight. And there you have it, the fixed gym leaders of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. These games always felt like such a mishmash of ideas and towed the line decently well between introducing the current generation's concepts like Mega Evolutions while staying faithful to their original counterparts. But I think especially with these games confirming that they take place in an alternate timeline than the originals, their teams might as well have been given a bit of a boost to catch up to the options that the player was given throughout the game. But yeah, let me know what you think about my changes in the comments below. I always love seeing the advice and critiques down there and reply to as many as I can. Thank you all so much for watching, and a special thank you to my channel members. You guys are the very best. I've been O Creations, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!